welcome. Dear students, today our topic of deliberation is T. H. Green. The objectives of this lecture are to understand the ideas of Green regarding number 1, idealism and politics, number 2, British idealism and modern society, number 3, his contributions in modern philosophy. Thomas Hill Green is one among the thinkers of modern liberalism. He laid the foundations of modern liberalism by making the final break from utilitarianism. T. H. Green is popular as English historian, philosopher, theorist and reformer. He was born at Yorkshire in 1836 as son of a clergyman and lived up to 1882. Green was a tutor and fellow of Balliol College, Oxford, and was a central figure in the intellectual world of high Victorian culture. He was professor of moral philosophy at Oxford. Green acquired reputation as a philosopher through his publications in the field of ethical and modern political philosophy. Lectures on political obligation was a remarkable text on his philosophical thinking. His political philosophy was primarily metaphysical. His manuscripts show him as an idealist and metaphysics as a necessary starting point from his philosophy. Let us try to understand Green's idealism and politics. At the beginning of his academic career, English society was going through a period of unprecedented change. The Industrial Revolution had drastically altered the traditional pattern of society. The technology had played significant role with the advancements of manufacturing sector, transportation, inventing new machines, and usage of fossil fuels had become the new normal. This led to considerable economic growth, but it has negative impacts on environment. The political and social reforms introduced during the period were too weak to defend them. The resultant massive changes within the culture, economic and social structures of the country caused many traditional ideas and values to be challenged and even abandoned. The significance of Green's philosophical task was to demonstrate the archaic nature of classical liberal political theory so as to pave the way for a better theoretical rendering of these achievements. Green opined that the essential flaw in the doctrine of laissez-faire originated from an erroneous metaphysics as was to be found in the empiricist philosophy. Laissez-faire is an economic philosophy of free market capitalism that opposes government intervention. He believed that replacing classical liberalism had to proceed from a metaphysical criticism. You might be wondering what this metaphysics is. It is a branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, identify, time and space. The metaphysics is a part of idealism. Idealism, in simple words, is the belief in a spiritual principle as the basis of the world without reduction of the physical world to more illusion. The prime agenda is to find the notion of the necessary causal relation, an abstraction drawn from overt behavior. The lesser goal was to so characterize and categorize human ideas that a justification could be developed which would support prescriptions for political, social and moral life. T. H. Green belongs to this philosophical tradition. Green, in addition, tied closely in upbringing, temperament and surroundings to the Christian evangelical tradition in England. Green wanted to harness the power of philosophic insight to create a vision of a kind of good life which could be reached by the common person who would but follow the cues and hints provided in daily intercourse with the world. Green developed a model of human consciousness, an abstract model consisting of general propositions about people in their social milieu, which could be seen by inference to relate to the common aspirations of humankind. He also prescribed best modes of political organization and state action. He founded the basic ideals of liberalism upon a classical basis. His psychology, sociology and political theory are rooted in a tradition of thought that begins with Socrates and that in many ways is reminiscent of Edmund Burke. T. H. Green's formal philosophic starting point was a critique of the whole tradition of British empiricism and the utilitarianism which he felt was its direct descendant. A major part of Green's collected works consists of critiques of Locke, Berkeley, Hume, Mill, Spencer and Lewis. There were two central arguments which Green deployed against empiricism, utilitarianism and naturalism. The first was a critique of hedonistic pleasure pain assumptions on the ground that they could not satisfactorily explain important aspects of human conduct. The second argument was an epistemological attack on the theory of knowledge which supported empiricism. While attacking on the pleasure pain principle, Green asserted that human behavior cannot be explained without reference to abstract goals and ends. He noted that the references greatest sum of pleasure and pleasure in general are abstractions of a very high order. Green's contention is that a distinction needs to be made between the random pursuit of discrete pleasures and the quest for a general state of pleasure. The former is a base for utilitarianism, but it does not explain many self-sacrificing acts of human behavior. These acts demonstrate that the study of human behavior must reveal a pursuit of some abstractly defined general good for the self. The self is capable of innovation and can direct its efforts toward the improvement of itself and others. With this analysis, Green has projected that the idea of a highest good defined apart from discrete pleasures. These discrete pleasures are not viewed as ends in themselves. Indeed, they cannot be that. Rather, they are thought to be elements of the abstract state of satisfaction. The second level of his critique of empiricism, utilitarianism and naturalism gets closer to the heart of the matter. Green's epistemology is derived from Kant and Hegel, which places Green in direct opposition to the English empiricist tradition. He argued that human knowledge simply could not be explained as the accumulation of sense impressions. No matter how fancy the apparatus for combining and abstracting sense impressions is deemed to be. The mechanical processes of absorbing sense impressions cannot make up the man capable of knowledge. People must be something more than simply sensors. But what is it in human nature that separates the sense impressions? The answer is consciousness. In Green's lexicon, consciousness implies the capacity what is to what might be. According to Green, consciousness is a metaphysically derived category. Green's theodicy demanded that there be some overarching purpose in human life beyond sensory experience and above the mundane level of pleasure and pain. The nebulous category of consciousness is used to explain why human beings aspire not to discrete pleasures but to a state of satisfaction, and why an individual is more than a simple collector of impressions. A conscious human being can move beyond the immediate experience of pleasure and pain to anticipate a future state of being. Green's political philosophy is simply the logical extension of these altered conceptions of humanity and society. Most importantly, he radically revises the earlier theory of rights. Since reason is not subordinate to the drives and desires. Green could not accept the theory that rights are rooted in utility, nor he accepted the doctrine of natural rights. Rights are prescriptive as per Burke, and it is convincing to Green also. Green desires an expansion of individual liberty with reference to intellectual and political activities. Moral reason is the compulsion for the social order, and the goal of self-perfection is the whole point behind Green's revision of classical liberal doctrine. Green considers right as a social claim and advocates contributing for larger social good. Green sees in the appropriation of property as an essentially moral act through which individuals learn in the act of appropriating their responsibility towards others. Ideally, they learn to control their acquisitiveness for a larger social good and to use their property in ways that are conducive to the moral improvement of others as well as to themselves. The state should have taken a responsibility to clear responsibility to ensure that the distribution of property is such that all citizens share in its benefits. It must take positive steps to see that the national wealth does not become concentrated in few hands, that others are deprived of its moral benefits. With this reasoning, Green has become an advocate of the positive state rather than of the strictly negative state favored by classical liberals. Green nevertheless remains a liberal. His focal point is the individual, not the state. The state is to play a positive role only in removing those obstacles that prevent individuals from realizing their moral freedom, such as inequitable property relations, ignorance, lack of healthy living conditions, and so forth. The state cannot take from individuals their capacity for free moral choice without destroying the possibility of individual self-perfection that it was created to protect and encourage in the first place. Broadly, this can be understood as modern liberalism, a philosophy first articulated by Green and Oxford idealists. Green, British idealism and modern society. The advancement of the knowledge and technology in the 19th century, Great Britain's transformation from agricultural society to an industrial, the massive changes within the cultural, economic and social structures of the country caused many traditional ideas and values to be challenged and even abandoned. Charles Darwin's The Origin of the Species, Sir Charles Lyell's geological evidence of the antiquity of man, the sewing machine or the cotton gin, and the new process of making steel out of iron had made the adverse but pervasive impact on the religious and moral beliefs of British people and their daily lives. The great amount of wealth of the nation was in the hands of the privileged few, including nobles, landlords, squires, and the rising middle class. The laymen and common people were working more than 10 hours a day for a meager income. The modernization of British society had its bright side and the dark side as well. The emergence of new theories and ideas had constituted a dissolving power confronted with the stability of the social and political hierarchy of Britain. It envisages a rational explanation of how species survive and adapt to the changing environment by natural selection, and discredits the theological doctrine of God creates the world. The theory of evolution has this challenge the authority of the Christian Church and shaking the beliefs of people in the teaching Christianity. The idea of natural selection has led people to think that it is the fittest and strongest one who will survive in a changing world, and that each person has to compete with others and to win for survival. Green was a person who had the passion of the common good of society and compassion for his fellows, no matter which social class they were belonged to. He urged for the enfranchisement for all adults, supported the reform of education system to abolish the distinction of students in accordance with their social backgrounds, regulations for child labor, safe working environment, reasonable working hours, and the strict liquor licensing, and propagated the importance of establishing laborers' unions. Green was a reformer under forerunner of social justice, and the way he chooses to change the existing social and political system was not revolution, but to seek popular support from his fellows to rebuild inadequate regulations and to legislate new laws. Most of the working class had no chance to attend school, education, and to learn sufficient knowledge for making judgment. Green was intended to achieve his philosophical discourse in public discourse and public speeches were to restore the communal bond of people and to secure foundation of British society. Green was recognized as the leader of a new philosophy which was named as Oxford Hegelian School in the beginning and subsequently called as British idealism or Hegelianism. Green was lauded by contemporaries and observers of subsequent generations as a model activist intellectual. T.H. Green has produced numerous books and articles over the course of his career. The following are some of the examples where his philosophy has been explained. Number 1, The Principles of Political Economy 1878 is an application of Green's ethical and political theories to the field of economics, arguing for a more human and socially responsible approach to the economic policy. He criticized classical economists Adam Smith and David Ricardo as their theories were emphasizing on individual self-interest and free market, which can lead to economic inequality and social unrest. He gave prominence to state to regulate economic activity in order to promote common good rather than private profit. The common good can be possible by social cooperation and solidarity in economic activity through cooperative enterprises and the promotion of social welfare programs. Number 2, The Theory of Positive Freedom 1881, an essay emphasizing the importance of social and political institutions in enabling individuals to achieve their potential. According to Green, individuals could only be truly free if they had capacity to exercise their rational will, and that his capacity was dependent on the presence of social and social institutions that fostered individual development and well-being. He emphasized on education and economic opportunities in enabling individuals to realize their full potential and exercise their autonomy. This positive freedom is closely connected to the role of the state, and the state had to promote the common good and to create the conditions necessary for individuals in exercising their freedom. These freedoms are education and healthcare, economic regulations, and ensuring social justice. Number 3, The Prolegomena to Ethics 1883 emphasizes the importance of the individual will in determining moral action. Green argues that ethical concepts are grounded in the idea of obligation, which arises from our recognition of the value of other persons and the moral law that governs our relationships with them. He emphasizes the importance of the individual will in ethical decision making. He said that the moral obligations are not simply imposed upon us from external sources, but rather arise from the choices that we make as individuals. The education should aim to cultivate the individual will in order to promote moral autonomy. He also dealt with the relationship between ethics and religion, the nature of moral progress, and the role of state in promoting moral well-being. Number 4, the lectures on the principles of political obligation 1885. One of the important contributions explores the concept of political obligation and the role of state in promoting the common good. The political obligation is not based on a social contract or a sense of duty to obey the state simply because it has the power to enforce its laws. Rather, Green sees political obligation as arising from the fact that the state represents a community of individuals who share a common set of moral values and interests. Green emphasizes the importance of the individual will in political obligation. According to him, the individuals have a moral duty to obey the state because they have freely chosen to participate in the community that the state represents. He also argues that political obligation is not absolute and that individuals have the right to disobey the state when it acts contrary to their moral principles. The Ethics of Aristotle 1886 is a detailed analysis and commentary on Aristotle's ethical theory. Green's commentary focuses on Aristotle's ideas about the nature of human flourishing and the role that virtue plays in achieving it. He argues that human beings have a natural desire to live a good life and that this desire is fulfilled through the cultivation of virtues such as courage, justice, and wisdom. The moral education should cultivate virtue and the individuals must be trained to recognize and pursue what is truly good in order to achieve a life of moral excellence. The reason must guide our actions. Number 6, the value and influence of works of fiction 1889 is an exploration of the role of literature in shaping the moral values and promoting social progress. Green explores the role that works of fiction such as novels and plays play in shaping our moral and intellectual lives. As per Green, fiction can have a profound influence on our attitudes, beliefs, and behavior, particularly in the realm of ethics. He sees fiction as a powerful tool for exploring moral issues and presenting moral dilemmas in a way that engage the imagination and emotions of the reader. Fiction plays an important role in shaping our intellectual development. Fiction can provide us with insights into human nature and the world around us that are not available through other forms of knowledge. Fiction is a means of exploring different perspectives and expanding our understanding of the complexities of human experience. Fiction also can be dangerous if it promotes immoral or harmful attitudes and beliefs. Number 7th, The Mind and Reality 1893 is a series of lectures delivered by Green on the nature of reality and the relationship between mind and matter, and the role that perception and experience play in our understanding of reality. The mind plays an active role in shaping our perceptions of reality, and that our experience of the world is mediated by our mental processes. The perception as an active process of interpretation rather than a passive reception of sensory data. The language and concepts shape our understanding of reality. The use of language and concepts is not simply a reflection of the external world, but that language and concepts actively shape our perception of reality and our understanding of it. Number 8, The Development of Political Theory 1892 provides a historical survey of political theory, tracing its development from ancient Greece to the modern era. Green explores the history of political theory from ancient Greece to his own time, with a particular focus on the development of liberal political thought. The political theory is a product of its historical context, and that it must be understood in the light of social and political conditions that gave rise to it. He traces the development of political theory from the ancient Greeks through the medieval ages and the Renaissance and into the modern period. Green sees the rise of liberal political thought as a product of the Enlightenment and the development of modern science and technology. He argues that liberalism is based on the idea of individual freedom and the importance of rational inquiry, and that it has been shaped by a range of historical and cultural factors. T. H. Green's philosophy has been subject to a number of criticisms over the years. His writings were often unclear and difficult to understand. The philosophy is often characterized as a form of idealism, which emphasizes the role of the mind in shaping our experience of reality. Some critics argue that this approach is too abstract and detached from the concrete realities of human life. Green's emphasis on the importance of the common good and the idea that individual interests must be subordinated to the collective good has been criticized as a form of ethical monoism. Some argue that this approach can lead to the suppression of individual rights and freedoms. Some critics argue that Green's philosophy is too closely tied to the historical context in which he lived, and that it does not have much relevance for contemporary debates in philosophy and politics. Despite these criticisms, Green's philosophy continues to be studied and debated by scholars today, and his ideas remain an important contribution to the fields of metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and political philosophy. So, dear students, it was all about today's lecture regarding ideas of T. H. Green. Hope you understood it well. Thank you.